Venice, a city of dreams built on the water by a romantic people. Anchored in the very entrance to the Grand Canal, our steamer seems a mighty monster indeed beside the tiny gondola that comes to take us for a ride. Flanked on every side by ancient palaces of the fallen doges, the Grand Canal, or Canal Grand if you wish to be exacting, is an enchanted fairyland. Tall moorings decorated in myriad colors weave with the lapping of the water, and green moss trims in alabaster the steps of the palaces. Mosaic and tile of brilliant colors abound, and everywhere gondolas splash merrily on their way, carrying businessmen as well as pleasure seekers, for it is the cheapest method of transportation in this fair city and most romantic on earth. We must hurry. We are headed for a rendezvous with a famous artisan. Cavalier Celso Pierre Bakovich has promised us an opportunity to watch the most famous glass master in the world. Often had we heard of the glass master, but until today we had thought of him as a myth. Now the hands that fashion 1,000-lira goblets for the nobility would make a dolphin loving cup while we watched, and we had the Cavalier's promise that we could film the process. Permissions had been arranged, and so we entered the Palazzo Barbarigo, where the Compagnia Venezia Murano holds forth. Here in this furnace room sits the glass master, attended by 2 apprentices who needs must serve for many years before they can hope to produce a work of art. The master fashions each day some new object. Never does he produce a duplicate, but strives always to create some new delight in glass. And while the master puts the base of our loving cup together, while he crimps the edges and makes the lower stem, let us review the history of glass. The art of glassmaking was brought to the Venetian lagoons by the people who took refuge there at the time of the Hun and Longobardian invasions. They came from the most flourishing towns of the Roman Empire, where the fine arts were in full bloom. A document dated 1090 is the remotest tracings of this famous art. Fostered and protected by the paternal laws of the Republic, it developed and reached its greatest splendor toward the end of the 15th century. Since the inception of this artistic industry, the Council of the Ten had comminated the severest penalties against those who should put their knowledge to the service of other countries. When the political power of the Queen began to decline, the glass-making art began to wane also, and when the Republic fell, the industry underwent a total breakdown. Then came a period when only a few men stuck to the traditions of the fallen masters and carried on their art in secret. These men are the forefathers of the glass masters of today. Their jealously kept formulas, based on mineral salts and pure gold, still impart to the finished object the charming and unique shades these ancients strove so hard to obtain. Back centuries and are handed down from father to son. In the 11th century, when glassmaking in Venice began, and the workers copied the early Roman and Phoenician arts, the tools were necessarily primitive. Today, these same tools, in no way modified or improved, are still used, and their use will undoubtedly continue as long as glass making remains an art. The descendants of those ancient artists formed a very close guild indeed, and were considered as noble as most of the aristocratic Venetian families. That they were the only artists allowed to marry a girl of noble conditions. They enjoyed no end of moral and financial privileges, including the degree of noblesse, and were presented each year by the ruling Doge with a coin bearing his portrait. Today they carry on the tradition, still using the same primitive tools and still maintaining a noble simplicity about their work and lives that creates an impression that the work is easy. To those of us who have never given much thought to the art, glassmaking is glass blowing. And we think of little chickens